What is up, people? What is going on with ya? All right. Marvin, we are back. They're loving us. We're finally back. We had to skip a week because it was Halloween. So spooky season.
Did you play the Halloween 3 song all day long?
Yeah, we should have. Oh, you see that massive heartbeat going on and everything. Oh yeah, you guys, you're gonna get these sound effects. You're gonna get these sound effects. Yeah, buddy. But yeah, so this is Comicsburgh, the Comicsburgh show. Welcome. All right. Thank you. And this is DP Brown, your friendly neighborhood host, with this main man Marvin. Marvin Wynn, creator of The Edge. Famed Comicsburgh, comic is doing, so good right at this point and everything. So, we gotta give props to where it came from and everything. I'm the co-creator, or I'm the creator. I'm not a co-creator. I'm creating myself, the theme of thieves. So thank you for that.
All by yourself.
all by my lonesome. All by my lonesome. So basically today we're going to get into talking about our famed script from script to store. The first part in a series of videos that we're going to do right here on our channel. And we're basically going to take you guys through like the process of what we go through in order to get our stuff from the brain to the paper, and out to you into the stores and everything. And it's not the easiest process in the world, right, Marvin?
I would say that it's probably the most daunting task that anyone will ever do in their entire life, including climbing mountains. It's worse than that.
Oh man, but it's a process. Sometimes it could be a fun process. It could be like real arduous and everything. Getting that idea, generating everything is like, a crazy thing. But once you get there, and the ball start rolling, it's like downhill from there and everything. And, we just try to keep the emotions going. A little bit of house cleaning. So make sure that you guys are, going to like our website, comicsburgh.com, where we feature like everything that we got Comicsburgh related. We got some really great stuff. We got like Memoirs of the Morbid from Grant. We got like The Edge, with my man Marvin. We got Theme of Thieves. We got from me, we got Heroinberg, from my man Manny. And we got some other stuff too. We got like, everything from like Alfred, Page, with his daisy chains, his various, stuff. So make sure that you guys are going to, straight to comicsburgh.com. We got some really great material for you guys to check out. Make sure that you leave us some feedback for everything that you see over at our Comicsburgh channels. Over on Facebook, we're at comicsburgh.com. I'm sorry, we're at Comicsburgh on Facebook, Instagram, all your favorite social media platforms, X, I'm forgetting. Well, anything anywhere that you on a TikTok, we do like dances and stuff and wiggles and stuff. We're gonna get Marvin to do some sort of movie and stuff.
Who the hell's dancing on TikTok?
Who the hell's doing all that? YouTube Shorts, all the good stuff and everything. We got somebody that wants to say hi to us, a promiscuous time traveler. Thank you for checking us out and everything. So appreciate you. So we're basically, and like I said, make sure that you're leaving us some feedback at info@comicsburgh.com. So if you feel that you need to check us out and, leave some feedback for us, we always appreciate that and everything. Thanks to everybody who supported our Comicsburgh Kickstarters. We had some ending, we had the Theme of Thieves, Comicsburgh, trade paperback ending last month. We had the Blaine Edge, Kickstarter ending last month. We had like the Incubator, Kickstarter ending. Memoirs of the Morbid ended. So, Comicsburgh, we're still out here. We're still moving. We're still hustling and everything. Making sure that you guys are getting all our wares and all that stuff, And then also still want to say, make sure that you support your public library. So, that's just a known thing. So always got to promote the libraries. All right. Footpath. We ended that last month and everything. So basically just make sure that you guys are checking us out. All right, so what we got going on here today, Marvin, we are going to go from script to story today. Okay, so we're basically presenting the first part in our series of script to story stuff. And basically, as Marvin can attest to, when we're trying to come up, with these ideas for the stuff that we try to put out and everything, it's not like the greatest stuff. I want to say just for myself, it took like about to come up with like the whole theme and thieves concept. It took me about like 5 years. So I'm not going to go through like the whole 5 year process of what I went through, but just to get the idea formulated in my brain, writing notes and all that stuff down, getting ideas set and correlated into like, maybe just like one or two, pages and everything. Once I got it to that point, then I was able to, start the script making process, which is where we want to start you at with our process and stuff. But Marvin, like when you came up with the edge, did you already have that in mind, or what inspired you? How long did it take you to eventually get to the point where you started on the script?
Right, most of my stuff was inspired by things from the '80s, like GI Joe, X-Men, etc. But yeah, so that was in the '90s, and I don't think I had a competent script down until like 2006. I was
okay.
Humble fact is that it was trash. And I think that my biggest crime was like I didn't write characters, I wrote powers. So I wrote about a power, and then I assigned it to a character. Instead of having the character grow into that ability, I kind of created ability and then forced it onto a character, and it didn't work.
Mm-hmm.
So like if you're writing a story, it has to be about something, and generally that something is going to be your antagonist or your protagonist or those co-stars, those supporting characters, and not just because it's an idea of, oh, I want this to happen or that to happen. It's okay to kind of work your way up to scenes, but starting off with an idea of the beginning, middle, end of a character, like even as little as where are they from? What were their challenges growing up? What were their challenges into adulthood? You almost have to have like from birth to death of the character so you know how they're going to react in certain situations.
Yeah, I mean, it's basically a lot that goes into it, right? And we basically, just want to, break down and talk with, let you guys know what like our process is, and we won't keep you too long and everything. But I thought this was like, really important for people because we get that access at conventions and stuff. How do you guys get to, put your stuff together? We get like people, inspiring writers, inspiring artists and everything who want to, make their own comics. So, they see us doing the things and, they're able to touch us and talk to us and everything and get inspired, whereas they may not even get like to like the major Jim Lees or Todd McFarlane's or whatever. So they're able to come to us because we're still, we're still in these streets, Martin, right? We're still in these streets doing our thing and everything. So, they could come up to us and ask questions, before we get to that point, where we're basically just like, putting them to the side.
Become untouchable.
Before we come untouchable. Before we come untouchable.
Oh, before you have to have guards at your table to keep people away. No.
Yeah. Big guards and everything. Right? That's when you made it, when you got those big guards there and everything. So basically, let's start with like your outline. So basically, you want to start with, once you got your idea together and everything, you start with the outline of your biggest stuff. So this is more or less like your blueprint. It doesn't need to be like overly detailed, but it should be clearly, identify like the beginning, middle, and end of your issue. Okay. So if your first issue, say for instance, it's going to be 22 pages. I know mine was yours like that, Marvin?
No, mine is 32 pages, I think.
32 pages. Okay, so I started with 22. Marvin started with 32 and everything. But the bottom line is it needs to have a beginning, middle, and end. So you define like your central conflict. What you want. The central tension, and that sort of like drives like the interest. and like your book and everything, all the key turning points, and basically like what emotional and thematic journey you want your characters to just go through. The strong outline keeps everything in the script focused, and it also prevents like you from drifting. Basically you don't want to just go flowing, just go on and on, within like your script and everything. Now you go like that, if you're basically writing drafts and then narrow and, focus things down. But generally, once you have that solid outline for what you want your pages to look like, you want to go that route. Was that how you more or less did everything with the Edge?
Right. So, I mean, in some instances, a lot of it is the hero's journey. So it's hero's born, hero falls, hero rises, and you want to kind of have that roller coaster of things in that outline, so at what point am I doing this? At what point am I doing that? When does the hero fall? When do they trip? And the more you have written down in the outline, the more it's going to help you guide you through the rest of the story.
Now we got a comment here. We got a fan, Marvin. Yeah, they want to pay just to say what's up to you. Marvin and his fans, man. Oh my, he got so many of them there. I can't keep them off the table when I'm at the convention and stuff. They come over. They don't want to say hi to me. They want to say hi to him. Marvin.
Yeah, I want to be that guy who comes to a con and then charges $100 for a signature and then gives them the money back. I just want to have on the table $100, and then when they pay me, like, I don't want your money, and you give it back to them.
Cash for a handshake, right?
Yeah. I'm a tip jar. There'll be a tip jar. You can have tips.
You know what? That's an idea. Hey, Marvin, don't keep talking, man. We should have tip jars at the table. Seriously, man.
Oh no! Remember the idea was to have the like the claw machine or the
yeah. You
like
did have that idea. I remember. Yeah.
Because like those claw machines are notoriously hard to win, so people just throwing money and they're trying to win. And that's the tip jar.
So these are little tidbits and ideas that you guys are, just going to be privy to and everything that, we got to actually implement, to see if they actually work. But if you don't try it, you don't know. So we'll be getting into stuff like that later in like from script to store, because as you go from like your script process, you get into like, getting into like making a comic and then also getting out there selling the comic. So we'll be talking about like cons and conventions, eventually on how to get the stuff into stores, when you do Kickstarter. So like I said, this is going to be like a series that, it's going to be very informative for anybody who wants to make comics or just make art in general, so maybe not just for comics, maybe some stuff on here that you guys could take advantage of. And because we really go to like all types of fairs, and we've been branching Comicsburgh out like in different branches, right, Marvin? Different places where you could do the stuff.
Right. So the idea is to not stay in your own bubble. So if you're trying to brand something, you can't just have it doing one thing. You have to be able to take it and then do it somewhere. So you have to be able to take Scooby-Doo and put them on a lunchbox, because you want to sell more than the show, because the show, the Scooby-Doo show is just advertising for something else. So you want to sell something else. But for us, it's the reverse. So we want to sell you a soda and then have you buy a book, or sell you coffee and have you buy the book, or some barbecue sauce, or something else that's outside of the bubble of the norm of what we're trying to give you, and then try to get you to get the other thing if you don't want it.
Yeah. So just keeping the brand out there, just making that brand, keeping that brand strong. And we'll be talking about that in future, episodes, as far as, making sure that your brand is strong. As you see that, we do everything Comicsburgh. If you're at conventions, we have our Comicsburgh, posters, we have our Comicsburgh banners, we have our Comicsburgh t-shirts, making sure everybody knows who we are. And when they see that, black and gold bridge and everything, they know, okay, Marvin, we got like plenty of sales from Pittsburgh, people out of town and everything. As soon as they see that bridge and everything, they're just like, okay, I gotta come and support.
Yeah, and there's always the I'm I'm a Steeler fan, or I used to live in Pittsburgh. It's like everybody used to live in Pittsburgh. I don't know what that's about, because I know DP used to live in Pittsburgh.
I lived there for 30 years, guys. So, I mean, I know a lot about the city. I've walked those bridges. Those are cold bridges, walked through Allegheny Center, you know what I'm saying? Going to like Art Institute and everything when it was open. Hey, I walked those streets. I may be from Cleveland, you know what I'm saying? But, I've walked those city streets of Pittsburgh. So I know and everything. Christian says, I'm down with the BBQ. Christian, oh God, goodness gracious.
It's going to be more than that. So I mean, we're talking hot sauce and hot honey too. So just keep an eye out.
Oh yeah, Comicsburgh is into everything. So it's all good, gravy. All right, so now we're going to get into like the page breakdowns. Okay, so after you get your outline together, you want to start breaking those pages down and everything, and the outline gives you like a good gauge of how you should start breaking your pages down. And when you break your pages down, the comics that you're thinking about, in script, it should sort of like rely on like pacing and a page by page structure that's like the heartbeat, for your pacing. So pacing within a comic is so important, because you don't want to make things happen too fast. You don't want to make things happen too slow. You want to make sure that the reader, gets engaged. As soon as they get into it, you may want to have a deep splash page or some sort of mysterious page that sort of gets them into the, into like your story and everything. Basically, you go ahead.
Yeah. Okay. So I was going to say that the one thing you have to keep in mind is you're not writing a novel. And what a novel doesn't need is a page turner. So a comic needs a page turner. You need a reason for that person to turn to the next page. So you remember, for those of us who are old enough, there was a Grover book that said there's a monster in this book. Is that what it's called? And you would turn the page, and Grover would freak out because you turned the page. He said for every page you turn, you're getting closer and closer to this monster. And it's like, it was like photos, like it's like, oh my goodness, you turned the page again. So that's called a page turner. So you have to have something that triggers that person to say, oh, what's going to happen on the next page? So just keep that in mind when you're writing your script, that you have to like make sure you're trying to put something in there that says, oh, what's on the next page? Novels don't need that, prose don't need that, comics need that.
Yeah, and if you think about when if you're watching like a TV show and everything, they have like the on network shows, they have like commercial breaks. They would have like what they call teaser or
a bumper,
scene enders, whatever, bumpers and everything.
Yeah.
You want to make sure that you're ending a scene with tease for to come back from that commercial, because as soon as you break, somebody, I mean, it could be something else to distract you from finishing what you're watching or what you're reading or what you're doing right then and there. So when Marvin is talking about having that, continuous page turner, you don't want to have a book, presented and, being read for, to somebody, and then them putting it down and going to something else. That's the last thing you want, and then, maybe they'll come back to it. Maybe not. Maybe they found your stuff like, they didn't find the tension as great as they wanted it to, based on like the cover that you put in. Maybe they didn't find the build up or momentum as good or as fast as they may have wanted. So these are things that you want to think about when you're talking about your page breakdowns. So like Marvin said, you have that tension, you have that page turner. You want to see, if there's it's going to be a monster on the next page and everything. You're going to want to see what that monster looks like if they keep teasing you. Just keeps putting it, in front of you, page after page and everything. I got to get to this monster. I got to get to, to that end to see how this thing is going to end and everything. Now, if at the end, if it ends up being something that doesn't satify you, at least you got to the end and everything.
Right. You made it to the end.
I think with every story that we read, Marvin, we're hoping that we come up and we're hoping that we have a good page turner that gives us a really good end.
Right. Right. And we were talking about bumpers. Like some of the best bumpers were like G.I. Joe and Transformers. Like when they went to a commercial, big on the screen, G.I. Joe returned after these commercial breaks, and then come back to G.I. Joe, and it's and it's pumping you up. Like, man, I can't wait till we come back. Or it's like they automatically put the character in danger, right? And they're like, oh no, how is he gonna get out of this one?
and think about it with the way they had it structured. So you're a little kid. You're like, okay, well, after these messages, we'll be right back, or like you said, we'll return after these messages and everything. That's telling the watcher, that's telling the viewer and everything that they will return, that you're not going anywhere and everything. You just gotta wait 2 and 2. What did that guy say? In the that he used to do the game shows and everything. Yeah, we'll be back in 2 and 2. 2 minutes and 20 seconds as far as commercial.
Mm-hmm.
After that's done, we'll be right back. And what did the message say after? They're welcoming you back. They're welcoming you back, from that little break and everything. And like you said, they have a, good the teaser at the before the commercial, and then after you get back into the action. So with comics, after you build up the, continue to build up for each page and everything, and makes you want to come back, for like the next page. It makes you want to do that page turner. And then if you think about where the page wants to hit and where that big, reveal, that big reveal lands, you want to make sure that you got enough space to, convey everything that you need once you get to that point, to make sure that the reader has a much, a satisfying read once they get into it. And like Marvin said, these are not novels. So while, you can apply certain things to novels, and we'll leave that to novelists and everything. Comics require, like, it's a visual medium, so it requires you to be even that much more visual when it comes to to like the stories and the beats and everything. Which brings us to the next. Go ahead, Morgan.
Yeah, right. I was saying there's a whole other set of rules for novels on on description and things like that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. It's still stories, and you're still breaking stuff down and everything. You're still doing the outlines, but novels is a whole different thing because they don't rely on visual like how with comics and stuff. Okay, which brings us to the next thing. We're going to talk about panel descriptions. All right, this is one of the things I love, Marvin. Panel description, because I get to be the director. So I'm really the control freak, the producer out of the whole thing. So when I'm doing my outlines, I'm doing my page breakdowns, getting the story and stuff all together. Now I get to be the director. I get to direct on how I want the actual page to look. How everything to break down. It's basically like a visual direction of the script. Okay. Each panel is like, a single frozen moment. So, since it's not animated, you got to put it in a way, and comics is just so unique where, you take frozen visual, elements and everything, and basically have the reader, imagine how these will look in a maybe animated form and everything, So based on your description that you will put for the artist when they eventually draw it, the panel descriptions are going to be like your directing, cues and everything for what you want to, put down there.
Right. So, I mean, it's basically you're doing breakdowns and kind of like I said, a fixed camera. But the one thing that you have to keep in mind when you're doing that is to make sure that your dialogue is going to fit on in those panels. So you're pretty much just putting down page 1, panel 1, describing what's in the panel to your artist, and making sure that you get all the points of the things that you need on that page. So I need a table. There's a vase on the table. There's a gun next to the vase, because you don't want that gun just to appear out of nowhere. So you're kind of like positioning it there because you want to use it. So remember, if you put something there, you have to use it. The gun has to be used because you showed it. The vase, doesn't necessarily have to be used, but I mean, don't put something there that it's just there just for dressing. But just make sure that when you're writing that script out, that you make sure that you know how much space you have on that page for that panel, and making sure that the dialogue fits in there. I did see a book a couple of years ago where they made the mistake of not making sure that their dialogue fit. So they had the dialogue was covering up some of the art. The dialogue was breaking panels unnecessarily. And it was almost impossible to read because you couldn't see the characters' emotions or what the characters were doing because the dialogue was covering up everything.
You know what? The funny thing is, that's one thing I had to learn when I was going through like my process and everything. Because I mean, Theme of Thieves is like I've written stuff before, but never put anything out. And when I wanted to put these out, I wanted to make sure it was like the best as possible. So my artist from the beginning, Dan Ekus, shout out to him who did like the first and second issue of Theme of Thieves. He allowed me, because I was doing like a lot of over dialoguing and everything. So I wanted to keep a lot of stuff in there. So I really had to break down some of the panels, put more panel action and stuff in there so I can get a lot more of the stuff from the dialogue that I wanted to convey. Now that's to each his own, if you want to do that. I'm very dialogue heavy when it comes to like my work and everything. So, but at the same time, like Marvin says, you don't want your dialogue to cover up, the magnificent artwork that your artist does. You want to leave some sort of visual interpretation of the stuff that you're trying to, convey for like the artist and everything. So another thing is in the 80s, 70s and everything, dialogue used to be really heavy for, what I want to say here, Marvin, exposition. Yeah. They basically telling the reader, so you already have the artwork, but the dialogue shouldn't necessarily tell the reader everything that's going on, at least nowadays, and
Well,
I don't necessarily.
Here's a quick thought on that. So imagine you're watching a movie and you're seeing what the character's doing and they're describing everything they're doing. They're just talking out loud, saying, I'm at the store, I'm buying bread.
Yeah,
there's eggs on sale.
Doing that, exactly that, and everything. That's bad dialogue.
Right.
That's really egregious and everything. And them describing everything that happened maybe in a prior scene or about to happen. That's called exposition. Some a pet peeve of mine. In some instances, you may need it, but in a lot of instances, I think it's a lazy way of just trying to convey the story. Is if I can have my art convey as much as possible, and then a dialogue just enhance it. So the dialogue that I write, I think is more like thematic, to where it's not so much describing what's happening. It's more or less being more character based and character driven, to where I give my artists that that freedom and leeway to go at it. I give them a brief panel description. I don't overload it with too many actions or too much detail. Because I learned from the beginning, if I do, I used to Marvin, I used to be where I used to make thumbnail sketches of everything that I had and then try to give it, to the artist. My artist said, no, just let me do everything. And it it let a lot of weight off me, because I was getting tired of doing like thumbnail sketches of everything,
Right. So that just puts you in the position of being both the director and the cameraman.
Yeah, exactly. So, but you don't want to be the director and the cameraman if you don't have to, because there's other things that you want to get to, especially if you're like the writer, creator, owner, and all that stuff of your work and everything. Why do all this work when other people can do it, especially if you're paying somebody else to do it? And that's what he was like. Dan was like, you're paying me to, do this stuff. You don't need to be doing all that stuff. Let me interpret what you put down and see if we can collaborate and make sure that, this is the type of vision that you want. And sure enough, I'm like the type of person where, I put something out there, I can't wait to get the artwork back. That was one of my favorite things. I can't wait to get the artwork back to see how they interpreted my stuff,
Awesome.
So, so basically, when you're breaking down your panel descriptions, don't overload it. Just keep it simple. Keep it and trust your artist. And that will be another thing to tag on top of the panel descriptions. Trust your artist. So when you get to the point where you are hiring your artist and everything, trust that they'll actually do the work and interpret it the way that you would want to. You got anything to add before we get to the next one?
Yeah. So the acronym that you want to use is KISS. Keep it simple, stupid.
Keep it simple, stupid. It works almost in every type of medium and everything, because people love simple. They may think that they're complex, and they're people, they don't want to keep thinking about different stuff. So if you can keep it just simple, everything, it'll just be the best thing for everybody. All right. So the next thing we're going to get into, dialogue and captions. So we were already talking about dialogue and everything. you know. So basically, if we're getting into dialogue, um, um, comic dialogue, must be very, concise, purposeful, character driven. If you want it to be that way, word balloons, occupy physical space so that the lines need to be tight and expressive. Like Marvin said, you don't want to necessarily overload dialogue so it could cover like the page and everything. So as much as you can keep it simple, for the reader, your dialogue still needs to express that personality, emotion, and conflict. Captions, on the other hand, they basically convey like, the narration of the character, and so like the character inner thoughts. And if you have to like, switch scenes or time jump or whatever, make sure that you're real economical and in the dialogue and the captions that you use for your page.
Right. What I say is that the captions are very important for location setting also. So if you want to establish a location for where the story's taking place, especially like you said, if you switch locations, then you should put a caption up saying, "Oh, we're at the park now. We're at the grocery store." But one thing that I've noticed that's missing from a lot of modern comics are word bubbles or thought balloons. Sorry. So I mean, do you feel like you use a lot of thought balloons?
So I don't use thought balloons in the 80s sense. When I do use thought stuff, I put it in like, those captions where it's expressing like, it's in a square. It's not in like the actual thought balloon that you think of from like the 70s, 60s, 70s, and 80s and everything. So I do give my characters those. I think it in like the 80s and the 90s and like the aughts and stuff, it just gave the page a cleaner, more modern look, versus having like the little small bubbles into like a big thought balloon and everything.
Yeah. Right. So then, I mean, it just gives them another way to think about what they're already doing.
Yeah.
So instead of talking about what you were doing, now you're thinking about what you're doing. You're not showing somebody doing.
Yeah, and like I said, if it's a way for you to convey what that character's, how they're, because we all think, and we're all thinking about something and stuff, gives you an insight into the person's inner character and everything. So I don't necessarily dissuade people from doing that. Is when you actually talk it out,
right.
When it's like, is this character crazy or why are they talking about so much?
So promiscuous time travel, yeah. So to me, dialogue is used to explain something that's not explained in the art. So the character is explaining to the other character, "Hey, we need to be at this location at this specific time to catch the bad guy because he's up to no good." That's something that you can't convey in the art. So it's kind of like you said, like an explainer, like those explainer videos where you're trying to get a message across, and again to keep the story moving because the artwork can't explain it by itself.
And the way I do my stuff, I use like I put a lot of panels and stuff. I'm like on the old school, like Watchmen, 6 to 9 panels and everything per page to get my characters a little bit more feeling and everything when they're talking to each other. So my characters tend to be a lot more expressive in the way they mouth their stuff or the way their eye movements and everything, and it corresponds with the dialogue that they're saying. Because the way I'm feeling is that if I'm talking to somebody in real life and everything, there's all types of different stuff. Now you got to definitely calm yourself down. You don't want to have a whole page of just, different, stuff. I mean, it makes it a little bit boring and everything. But if you check out like, the Theme of Thieves, and some of, our other stuff at Comicsburgh, you'll see the way that we position our at least my dialogue and everything for my characters to convey whatever they're talking about to make it as interesting as possible for that page and everything. Dialogue is a hard thing. It is not the easiest thing to come up with. It's not the easiest thing to express, especially in comic form.
So I mean, if it's a movie, if you're looking at a movie, I would say like a Quentin Tarantino movie, as an example. I mean, he's not the one of my favorite directors or so, but he has really good dialogue in his movies. And the dialogue again is using to move the story along because it's something that you are doing that you don't know what they're doing, so they have to explain it. Except for in the Hateful Eight when they did the narration and it kind of took you completely out of the story for no reason. Yeah, so like True Romance is a good one. Mm-hmm. What's another good one? Kill Bill for dialogue. So like if you're struggling with dialogue, go into movies because it's the easiest way to see how characters are interacting with each other and how they're explaining the things that are going
on. Another thing I want to stress, and this basically for the overall, like, just putting your stuff out, you're there to entertain at the end of the day. We make this stuff to make, other people feel good about what they're reading and watching, reading or what have you and stuff. So just keep in mind, whatever you're putting out there, you're there to engage the person, engage the reader, make sure that you're entertaining them because like we said in the previous, things that we were talking about before, we want to keep the page turning. You want to keep your reader just snap. Okay, well, the character said this, and you're making dialogue to make sure that you can relate to them. Somebody who is like that person or whatever. So your dialogue is very very important to do that. Mm-hmm. Not only does it have to explain how the character is, especially if you're doing inner dialogue, you have to let other characters in the story know, so the flow can like go along.
Just and then on the comic side, Claremont's X-Men. That's where you go to get a lot of heavy dialogue that again is pushing the story forward. So yeah, X-Men, 80s, 90s, Tarantino films. I mean, there are others, but I like if I'm like needing a booster on dialogue, those are things that I go to and I say, hey, let me read some of this or watch this, and then it gives me ideas on how I want the characters to interact.
Yeah, I've gotten a lot of inspiration from Tarantino stuff and everything. A lot more of my inspiration comes from the TV side of things. I'm like really into, as Marvin can attest to, I've always talk about Lost, Quantum Leap, The Wire. The Lost, I'm a big fan of Damon Lindelof and his style structure and the way he generate his character and everything. So those are like some of the inspirations when it comes to stuff that I write. So when I'm actually putting dialogue to a character and everything, I want them to feel like they're actually watching the person, maybe on like a TV show. It's still a frozen image and everything, but they want to make them feel that they're actually in a flow, when it comes to all this and everything. So
and I'll put one out there for TV, and it is one of the best written shows I've ever watched. Rick and Morty. Rick and Morty has some of the best dialogue on these shows that I've ever watched before. So that's another one to not just for all the shenanigans to go on, but the way the characters interact with each other.
Yep, Dan Harmon. So I mean, you follow when you start following some of these creators and everything, you start seeing like how their stuff is, and not necessarily mimicking them, but you're getting inspiration for when you actually put your stuff down. You can sort of find a way to like engage in everything. So the dialogue and captions very important. Don't overload the scenes and everything. Just keep it, like Mara said, keep it simple as possible, but to the point where you can make sure that you're entertaining and everything.
Right. And then keep in mind that if you overdo it, I mean that you have to take it to the past. So I've had situations where the art has gone out, come back, send it to the letterer, and it's just not working. So I had to rewrite some of the dialogue and find ways to move the story forward because some things I had to cut may have been important, and then they were not so much important because they had to go.
Oh man. And we're going to get into that in like future episodes as well and everything. So like I said, guys, this is not an easy process. It's a process. and not the quickest thing to do when you're doing that. So on the final one, as we talk about the top 5 key things to writing a comic book script, camera angles and views and everything. And this is something that we were sort of alluding to earlier when we were talking about, with you being like the director. You're the director of your own set, show, or what have you when you're making your comic. And basically this element shapes how each moment feels. So you want to basically have like wide shots, close-ups, low angles, shoulder shots in your panel descriptions. And it gives the reader a different way of looking at like the characters, the scenes, basically anything that comes within like the storytelling emphasis, for each panel that you use. And basically when you use like these visual cues, you want to make sure that the lighting, the shadows, the different props, like Marvin was talking about, like the gun in a particular scene, also the environment details that sort of adds like the whole tone and it adds meaning to like like your dialogue and everything. And basically it gives your comic that cinematic quality to make sure that that you're really communicating all the subtle differences that you may convey in like your stuff.
Mm-hmm. And I mean, I would think that any writer that's sitting down to do this never thought that they was going to have to point a camera at something and light it. So, and I mean, and that's important in this process too, because visual cues like is important also, because you're going to sometimes light different panels on something on the same page, and other panels are going to be lit different because you want to call attention to something in one panel. So that's another piece that is going to be very important during the scripting and art process, is making sure that you're putting emphasis on something that you want to draw the eye to.
Yeah, it's a basic need, and it's part of like the whole process and everything. When getting the stuff together. I think next week, me and Marvin and whoever else that wants to come on here may actually have examples, for you guys to actually check out, because we want to show you guys, some things, that we use to get ourselves out there, to once we put the dialogue on the page and actually present it to you guys and stuff. But like I said, we're not going to keep you guys too long today. I do want to get to Marvin's Kickstarter that's coming up soon. He will be coming out with well, you actually tell him, Marvin.
Oh yeah, so this is the Volume 3 trade. The subtitle of that is God's Thunder. So the God's Thunder is the organization from issue 1 that wants to eliminate all enhanced people. So how do you eliminate someone who's enhanced when you can't run up and punch them in the face? You get someone else who's enhanced to do your dirty work. So this brings us to Kyrad. So Kyrad has pretty much come here to wreck enhanced people, but he has his own. So he's working for God's Thunder, but he has his own agenda. So we'll find out what that is in the pages of God's Thunder. So this will be issues 10 through 14 of The Edge. This was originally 10 through 15, but 15 has moved on to volume 4, and issue 14 will now be a double-sized issue.
Man, it looks like super exciting. It looks like, some really great action adventure stuff. Make sure that you guys are clicking on the link in the show notes and everything, so you can check this stuff out. I mean, follow the Kickstarter once it comes out and everything. I actually put like a link down here now, so if you guys want to copy it, and and I'll put the link in the comics and stuff. But make sure that you guys are clicking on that so you can follow. We have any idea when it's going to come out, Marvin?
January, February. When's the that 100 thing they do? Is that January?
Oh yeah, in January. So yeah, the Make 100.
Yeah.
So yeah. So we'll have a couple Kickstarters coming out from Comicsburgh that month and everything. That's one of their popular months where Kickstarter just gives you that extra push, that extra promotion and everything for putting a Kickstarter out that month and everything. So So January is what we're looking at, guys. So make sure that you guys are following it now. So you're not pledging now, you're basically just following the Kickstarter right now. So so for when it comes out, when to pledge, and what to pledge for when it does come. So that's Marvin's The Edge, volume 3, collecting issues 10 through 15. Okay.
14. 15 is but 15 was moved to volume 4. 14 is a double size issue.
Oh, okay. All right. Cool. All right. So we got that. All right.
Yeah, there was too much going on for me to do an issue break. So I said just go through the whole thing in one book.
All right. So next week we'll still continue our from script to store, and like I said, we'll come up with some actual visual examples for you guys to check out of some of the scripts that we have that correspond with like the artwork, that we've done for our pages for our, perspective books and stuff. And we love to get like some feedback and everything from you guys to let us know, what you're thinking about, what we got going on and stuff. So make sure that you're leaving us some feedback at info@comicsburgh.com. All right. So that's where you can send all your your emails and everything to let us know, what you're thinking about Comicsburgh stuff. And Rick said that would be cool for perspective. So yes, we can't wait for you guys to actually check that out. Make sure that you guys are actually sharing our these videos and everything, because we think this will be a really good learning thing, not only for for you guys and everything. It's a great good refresher for us to continue to basically give back. Like I said, we get people coming up to us at comic convention stuff all the time, inspired about our about our work, and asking us how we get this stuff together and how we get get it out there and everything. So like I said, this is the first part to a continuing series of stuff that we actually do at conventions called Script to Store, during convention panels and everything. So we've been working, that pretty decent, right, Marvin?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I mean, the goal on all this is to take the information that we have that we didn't have, and make sure that people don't fall into the traps like we did when we first started doing this stuff. So any kind of traps we can help you walk around, we are ready to go.
Make sure that you guys are following us at Comicsburgh. We are all over social media, X. We are on TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, anywhere that YouTube, obviously. If you hit that subscribe button and hit that notification, make sure that we actually make sure that us that we're on when you hit that notification. So make sure you hit that subscribe button, and make sure that basically that you're sharing this information and everything. We love for you guys to give it to other people so they know how to get into the stuff. And like I said, it's not just for comic stuff. It could be for anything that you're coming out, people who do novel stuff too. When we actually get into how to do your stuff for conventions, how to get your stuff ready together for conventions, we'll be going through all that. So thanks again for checking us out, and we definitely appreciate you. So we'll see you guys back next Friday, for the Comicsburgh show for Script to Store.